Jesus set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there, yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast out the demon of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first. It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the child's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed and the demon gone. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon towards the Sea of Galilee in the region of the Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hands on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, and put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then, looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be open." And immediately his ears were open, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed it. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Good morning. Once again, welcome to Good Shepherd and to our homecoming celebration. There's going to be food afterwards, but I'm sure you'll hear all about that during the announcements. I feel very blessed to have you all here. In a way, we have 4 beginnings in the church year. Advent, which is when the year-long cycle of the church begins. New Year's Day, when everybody everywhere, I think, maybe not everybody, but most people, celebrate the beginning of a new calendar year. Easter, with the resurrection of Jesus Christ and a world made new. And this day, homecoming, when we come back together after our summers and we look forward to a new programmed year. And this year, our choir will come back together again to lead us in song, this year with our wonderful new Emily Adams. Yay. And with gingerbread, it's coming soon, spaghetti supper, lamb dinner, dine-outs, comedy night, concerts, and so much more. And of course, coffee hour. This year, we'll see lots of opportunities for fellowship. We've got some exciting new adult formation programs coming, the season of creation care, Mental Health Awareness Month, spirituality and aging again. And with George here to take on some of the load, yay, George. Woohoo! We'll be doing more direct outreach and providing opportunities to volunteer in the community with your fellow parishioners as you support one another on that journey. And of course, our kiddos. How many kiddos here? Raise your hands. Woo, woo, make a noise. Woo. Okay, ready? Make a noise. Okay, let's see who can make more noise, the kids or the adults. Adults, make a noise. Okay, now, kids and teenagers, make a noise. All right, good enough. It's exciting, and we're coming home. And yet, we have seen that really there is some grief, and that this is not the home that it used to be. right? For a lot of people, it really isn't. There has been a lot of loss over the last 5 or 10 years,
Yeah.
including an extremely difficult year in 2021, not so long ago, when COVID and a tough time of clergy transition led to a huge drop-off in Sunday attendance and a significant deficit for 2022, where we had Sunday school attendance down under 10 people, and we lost several pillars of the church. Life,
You
with
must
its
have those
ups and
things
downs, does not
those
necessarily stop
rags somewhere
to
to
let us take a breath
clean
after a year
glasses,
like
you
that,
know.
does it? COVID continued to raise its ugly head during 2022 and into 2023 even. And we found ourselves reeling from the sudden deaths of 3 beloved parishioners under 60, all moms of young children and young adults. Nor does it give your church leaders a break. We find ourselves struggling with the inevitable ups and downs, as well as surgeries, sick parents' illnesses, our own children's needs. And yet here we are, y'all. Here we are, a vibrant church, our attendance rebounding, our Sunday school enrollment climbing, last year already back up over 20. A candidate for the priesthood hired to help build our programming and outreach, compelling adult formation, much of it led by our lay leadership, and lots of great work done on our building. Thank you, Sandy and Dawn, and all of the Building and Grounds Committee. But it's still not what it used to be. It's not the glory days that many miss. Yet it is new, something beautiful, something alive and transforming before our eyes. I see so many new faces out there. Meeting the world as it comes, built on the foundation of what came before, and supported by the efforts and wisdom of those who are established here, who know our history and our traditions. In our gospel today, I bet some of you were wondering when I was going to get to that, right? Jesus is heading into new territory. He goes to Tyre, Gentile territory, thinking, what's he think? He's like, I'm going to go there and get a break. And I'm going to have a little time to breathe. You know, I'm leaving the Judaic territory behind me and going to the Gentiles, so I won't be bothered with all of that. He really needed that break, because during that time when Jesus was living, that was a really, really hard time for the Jewish people. And I have to tell you, they put what this church has been through in some pretty significant perspective. The Jews were living under hard imperial oppression, their lands, their lives, subject to the cruel rule of Rome. Some of the Jews rose up and were hung on crosses along roadsides to deter others. Some tried to please the Romans and were disdained by their fellow Jews. Some held out hope that a Messiah would come and trounce the Romans and give them back what they once had. And only 3 or 4 decades after Jesus died and rose again, the temple in Jerusalem indeed did fall, was razed to the ground. Hard, hard times. And Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus was the one that would save them, save us, but he was not called to war, not to reclamation, not to what was, but to love, to reconciliation, to something completely new, to openness. This woman, this Syrophoenician woman who comes and interrupts his rest, is a new thing in the mission of Jesus Christ. A Gentile whose faith is so great that for her, the crumbs are enough. The crumbs are enough. And in that moment, the Jesus movement is cracked open. From the chaos of their own hurt and need for salvation comes something new. a movement where there is neither Gentile nor Jew, man nor woman, slave nor free. And from that time on, Jesus and his followers, from that moment when that woman accepted crumbs, from that moment on, Jesus and his followers extend their mission beyond the Judeans, although it is still very much a Jewish movement. In the wake of their strife, their trouble, they open, and a new thing, a both and, is born. Not what they expected, but very, very good. We are celebrating a season of creation, as you'll see from these stations of creation along the wall, which I invite you to look at after the service. So I'm going to use a metaphor from God's creation as we continue this time of rebuilding and difficult rebirth. There is something called ecological succession. Has anybody heard of that? Yeah, we got one back there. Yay, Marin. Okay, ecological succession. So when a natural disaster hits a forest, say a forest fire or an earthquake or a hurricane, there's this natural progression of regrowth. The established trees, the ones that have survived, they play this pivotal role. They provide shade, they provide food, they provide habitat for birds and small animals, and stabilization for the soil. They spread their seeds so new saplings can be born, and they play a role in determining what will grow anew after the storm. And meanwhile, you begin to see new growth. Annuals that come and stabilize the soil, but may not come for long. And we have people who come and go. And then you get perennials and seedlings that become established. New creatures begin to move in, and those seedlings from the large trees grow and grow into great, beautiful trees. And over time, the forest becomes something familiar but new. A healthy, thriving ecosystem that can die and rise again and die and rise again, be hurt and rise again, be hurt and rise again. So as we go into this new program year, let us not forget. Let us not forget that we as a community have been through a lot, and it hasn't been that long. And grief doesn't just go away. It's still here, especially when we have a reminder each Sunday that we are not what we used to be and that many are missing. I am sure the Jews mourned deeply their loss of autonomy and felt devastated by the deaths of their fellow Jews, betrayed by those who tried to work with the Romans. But there was Jesus. And here, right here with us, is Jesus, opening us to something new with his very life, promising that all will be well if we keep the faith, if we follow his commandments to love God with all our hearts and to love our neighbors as ourselves. Just as Jesus and his disciples' mission to the Gentiles grew out of their mission to the Jews, so what we are today at Good Shepherd is a direct result of all the good work and faithfulness that made it possible for us to be here today. This is a church where we strive always toward inclusivity, where we do our best to blur the lines of distinction, as James exhorted us in his letter, where we live the faith, and that, my friends, has not changed. There may be bumps along the road, hard ones. Even Jesus and his followers had those. But here we are. Here we are despite it all, and because of it all, we are home. We are home. Together once again in newness and in hope. open to possibility, rooted in a deep and beautiful past, saved by the one who makes all things new. Christ, my friends, has indeed made all things well. Amen.